So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this workshop, which is on disability leadership. The theme is strengthening the disability voice in internet governance. My name is Satish Babu, and together with Gunela, I'm the co-organizer of this workshop. And I'd like to welcome all of you warmly to this session, where we will discuss different aspects of disability. I will be looking after the remote aspect of this workshop, and Gunela will be managing the floor. So it's my pleasure to hand over the floor to Gunela. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Satish. And I'm Gunela Astbrink, chair of the Internet Society Accessibility Standing Group, and actually partnering with the Asia Pacific School of Internet Governance in regard to in regard to disability leadership training. So we're delighted to be able to present this workshop, this session to you this morning. And it's looking at how we can strengthen the disability voice in internet governance. So we might remember that in the opening plenary, Josh Steng,
recording in progress.
Josh Steng talked about that in future he would like to see that it's commonplace for someone with a disability to be in an opening plenary. It's commonplace to have people with disability participating in a range of different sessions at APrIGF and APNIC, maybe APrICOT in future. We're not seeing that so much now. And about 15% of a country's population, of any country's population, have a disability. But here, we might have 5 or 6 people who have a disability who have joined APrIGF. And we have 500 people or so. So the percentage is not quite right there. So, but I must say, at this particular APrIGF, there are more sessions relating to disability issues than ever before. So it just shows that there is more activity from the disability community. It also shows that we can put together good workshop proposals that are accepted for this event. So, I also want to say the majority of people on this panel have a disability. Anju does not, but is a fantastic champion of the disability community. So thank you, Anju, for joining us here today. And we've also want to welcome Manique Gunaratne, who is a manager of Disability Resource and Training Center at the Employers Federation of Ceylon, and Vashkar Bhattacharjee from Bangladesh, from the YPSA and a focal point on disability in Bangladesh. And we're hoping that Dr. Mohammed Shabbir from Pakistan will also be joining us remotely. So, if we get started, and we have quite an interesting discussion, I think. I'd like to ask the panel a question first, to make some high-level comments about disability leadership, what it means, and also the pathway to leadership. And that can include anyone, regardless of if they have a disability or not. So, Manique, would you like to start, please?
Right, thank you, Gunela. Disability leadership is very important because not only few people with disabilities should be empowered and given the leadership role, because it's even the generation after us, there should be someone to take the leadership. And also leadership is very important for one thing, to give the leadership and mentor other persons with disabilities, and also be in the disability movement, and make awareness, sensitize, starting from the policy making level to the grassroots level for people with non-disabilities as well. Disability leaders are very important to make this disability movement forward. So, for them to come up in life, the accessibility and digital inclusion and internet governance is important, where we met in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and we did the training. So after the training, participants who participated have to conduct national level trainings to empower the national level people with disabilities. Give them the leadership role so that they can empower other persons with disabilities. So for that, leadership is important, and also funding to make these leaders come up in life. And thereafter, it was a training of trainers. One person trains other person. It's like planting a seed. So when the tree grows up, it gives flowers and fruits, so that more people with disabilities can be given the leadership role. So all stakeholders, government level, private sector, everybody in the IT field, non-IT field, it's important that all of us, persons with disabilities and non-disabilities, including the organizations and institutions, get together and support at funding level, decision-making level, and in all areas to make people with disabilities get into the leadership role. Now we are in the leadership role, and we are, not everybody is there in the leadership role, so we must empower and let the others also get into this leadership role, so that in the generations to come after us, we'll be empowered and we'll have a better world with a barrier-free environment in internet governance.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manique. And Vashkar, could you please talk about your pathway to disability leadership?
Thank you very much, Gunela. Firstly, I would like to appreciate all of you who just came here to listen about the regarding 1 billion people of the globe. I would like to give a heartfelt gratitude to you for attending here. Secondly, I'd like to appreciate APrIGF and School of Internet Governance for considering disability one of the most important issues in this conference. We saw in the School of Internet Governance, there is a number of persons with disabilities. Expert has talked in a session. And same time, in the APrIGF, I'm really praise the chair of the APrIGF, who is sitting with me, Ms. Anju. She has again and again raised this point in different sessions and including the opening sessions. This is very important. My experience shows for internet governance issues, we have a 3-layer where we need to include the people with disabilities. First, we need to think about the national level engagement. And if we are unable to engage the people with disabilities in national level initiatives, such as a National Internet Governance Forum or other initiative, then we will not get the regional level leadership. So we would like to strongly like to recommend, please engage the people with disabilities as participants, as expert, as organizer, as decision maker in national level activities. Same time, when we have a national level leadership, then we can go for a regional level leadership, such as APrIGF, APSIG, etc. We want to see more voice from the people with disabilities and diverse group. Not only this time we are seeing on the representation from only 1 or 2 types, 3 types of persons with disabilities. We want more. The disability also a diversity. Diverse group. So we need to involve the intellectual disability, neurodevelopment disability, autism, speech and hearing disability, etc. Lastly, I'd like to give importance, that is skills and leadership of the persons with disabilities. As you know, we already taken initiative from the ISOC Accessibility Standing Group to create an enabling environment by providing skills and knowledge to the persons with disabilities. We already completed a training in Dhaka only for the persons with disabilities, where Gunela, Manique, and myself was there, and led by the Satish, the School of Internet Governance. They have really supported us. Thank you very much. And you'll be very glad to know that the people who have trained, they are now working with us very actively, and 2 of them working with me with the Bangladesh government as a accessibility auditors. So if you invest, they will return for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vashkar. There were so many important points being made there. And I'd also like to make a point. You see that there's an international sign interpreter, and that has been available during the opening, closing sessions, and also the disability focus sessions. So this is a first for APrIGF, and it's a great, yes. It's a great way to keep on showing how inclusive APrIGF is, and hopefully in future it will be possible to have sign interpretation at all the sessions. So we are moving along that path. So again, we're very happy to have Anju with us in this session. So thank you for joining us as an accessibility champion and talking about people with disability as a group, first of all, when you're introducing diversity and people at the center. So thank you, Anju, and please, over to you.
Thank you, Gunela, Bhaskar, Manique, and honestly, Satish, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. When Gunela asked me to join the panel, I hesitated. I said, I don't feel comfortable. It would be good if someone can speak from a disability point of view. But she made a point about how important it is to talk about disability from a policy point of view. Because we're doing quite a lot of work in relation to policies and how these activities and projects are sort of aligned to the policies that we work on. I work for the Alliance for Affordable Internet. It's an initiative of the World Wide Web Foundation. And the World Wide Web Foundation believes that the internet and the web should be open, secure, and safe for all. And by all, we mean everyone and community in this case. So by community, we mean that persons with disability, youths, rural and remote marginalized communities, and also women with disabilities, and also women that are facing a lot of challenges in remote communities should be part of the process. To me, leadership is about serving the community. And when you serve the community, it's about the community. It should not be about me, it should not be about the organization, but it should be about the person that you're actually serving. It's also important for leaders to understand that, and I think Manique made this point earlier this week about sympathy and empathy. There's 2 different things. You don't need to show sympathy to some extent, but empathy is very much needed today, and I think it's across the world. You need empathy when you're dealing with a lot of issues in this day and time. But empathy when it comes to persons with disabilities who are already going through so much challenges, I have to say the multi-stakeholder committee, the multi-stakeholder group, they've been amazing. That we have some fantastic volunteers that not only include Vashkar or Manique and other disability communities to join the sessions, but they're also going around making sure that they can enter the rooms. So we've been going around making sure they enter the rooms, they get food, they get to be introduced to people. And I think that is all about empathy. So if you are a true leader, you will make sure that you will not only just include them in various sessions that they need to speak on, but also throughout the entire process, right? It starts from the time they board the bus all the way to coming out of the bus, and then how do they then, you know, navigate around the buildings, around the rooms, etc. So, and leadership should be about making sure that, you know, you're involving everyone in this whole process. The other thing I want to say about leadership is that, you know, it's not easy to be a leader because you're constantly being, you know, judged to some extent. You're constantly being told, okay, this is not how it's done, or this is how it should be done. But I think if you put people at the center of your heart, you know what's right and how you can deliver that when it comes to persons with disability and communities that really need to be part of the process. And my final point is that I think, you know, just being aware that they're present in person, but also some of them are not able to join us, like Shabbir Bhai, who is from Pakistan. He's a great expert, and he's been doing so much in Pakistan, and he's working closely with Wakas and everyone in Pakistan. So I feel that we should also acknowledge them because they were not able to join us, but keeping in mind that it's not even affordable to be in such places. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Thank you. I hope I didn't say too much.
Not at all. Thank you very much. And yes, the pathway to leadership takes many turns. It often isn't a straight path. My path has taken many turns. It certainly has helped with people I know, people who have supported me, people who have introduced me, mentored me, and helped along the way to become a leader myself. And I thank all of those people, one way or another, who have been there on that pathway. So I thought we would also mention something that came out of this workshop in Dhaka. And maybe I can explain a little bit more about this training that happened. This is a partnership of the Internet Society Accessibility Standing Group and the Asia Pacific School of Internet Governance. And it gives an opportunity through this leadership training to find new persons with disability who we can mentor, and as Vashkar quite rightly said, start on the national level, on the local level, on the national level, and then build those skills up over time and build the confidence of an advocate in internet governance up, and then gradually move in to the regional level in the Asia Pacific. And so through this partnership, we've had a pilot project starting, and it's one first step, and that was to have this workshop in Dhaka, Bangladesh. That was in June this year, and that brought together persons from several South Asian countries, from Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And the idea, as we've already heard, is to build that capacity. And we had first some online training, and then cementing that in talking about the cross-section there between accessibility policy instruments on the international and the regional level with internet governance and where it fits together. And the idea is that we will in future have disability focused online training with that cross-section, and then have further stages. So we are hoping that we'll have that funding support to do so in the future. And one of the great outcomes of the Dhaka workshop, apart from building the skill set, was creating a document, an outcome document we called the Dhaka Declaration. And this was an opportunity to talk about the key issues that participants were concerned about, and how then we can put that in a document and continue the advocacy in those particular countries in South Asia. And so I'd like to ask Vashkar, and I'm be pleased to hear from Manique as well, about some of those particular issues that came up. There was a lot of government action needed.
Gunela, sorry to interrupt. Shabbir is joined.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Okay. So this is perfect timing, because welcome, Shabbir. I'd like to introduce Shabbir, who is representing the Internet Society Islamabad chapter, and he'll be speaking from, I believe, his personal perspective, but I also want to note that as a disability leader and a leader generally, he is on the Internet Society Board of Trustees. So if Shabbir can hear me, can you hear me, Shabbir?
Perfectly, Gunela.
Oh, excellent. Okay, welcome. Welcome to this session.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I was just introducing the outcomes of a Dhaka workshop in regard to the Dhaka Declaration. And I'd appreciate if you could explain a little bit about the steps to be taken to advocate to achieve some of those particular issues that we want to achieve, like government action, more accessibility in web accessibility, etc., etc. So over to you, Shabbir.
Thank you, Gunela, and the team for the opportunity. And hi to everyone, and a good morning from Pakistan. I've been listening to wonderful interventions by Manique, Vashkar, and Anju. So it's been wonderful that we are discussing these issues at APrIGF, not for the first time, but again. Before I talk about Dhaka declarations and its outcomes, I would just like to note that there are 15% of persons with disabilities, and this number is not decreasing, it's increasing every day as people age, as catastrophe, as conflicts, and as other kind of accidents happen. So this number is increasing. And of course, people have different kind of abilities. So we need to make the environments wherever they are accessible for not just persons with disabilities. And if you make these environments accessible for people with disabilities, people without disabilities also get benefit of these facilities, which may be introduced as facilities for people with disabilities. Dhaka workshop was a unique regional workshop in a way that we gathered a number of participants from the South Asian region, from different countries, who were supposed to be the leaders in their own domain, in their own respective countries, to discuss the issues that people with disabilities face in digital and particularly in IG domain. And one of the best outcomes, I would say, was the Dhaka Declaration, where the gathered participants, they not just call upon the governments and civil society and other organizations, international organizations, to call upon them to include persons with disabilities in the policy planning and implementation. But one step further, it goes and it also calls upon persons with disabilities to come out of their own comfort zones and to include in these kind of discussions. Dhaka Declaration is available online. I would request Satish or someone if they can post a link for the people to go through. But I think what is more important here is that it's also important for a leader, and particularly for people with disabilities, if they aspire to be the leaders, to break out their comfort zones, to come out of their comfort zones, because leadership does not happen in your comfort zone. It is all about coming out of your comfort zone, challenging the established norms, and telling people that there are certain things that need to be different in a different way. So thank you, Gunela and APrIGF, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shabbir. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the particular way we have designed the disability leadership training, and if there's ways that this model can be used in other regions, because we've started in South Asia, what adjustments could be made in regard to having that prerequisite online training and then matching that with the face-to-face, really intense training. Will that work as well in other regions? How can it be sustainable? So, Manique, would you be able to help us with that question?
Yes. When it's come to accessibility and digital inclusion, the course that we have been developed, first it was an online course, online course. So when people with disabilities are accessing this online course, according to the disability, we had to face a lot of difficulties. Some platforms which were asked to upload the assignments were not accessible. Some formats were not accessible according to the specific disabilities. So we came across a lot of difficulties and possible solutions how to make these online courses accessible according to the participants, right? Because solutions are there itself. Then the face-to-face training. Then the participants are able to discuss what are the other accessibility features they need and how to make digital inclusion in internet governance. Because it's through networking, through sharing experiences, and also various discussions, the knowledge can be given. Then training of trainers, then it goes to the national level in the very grassroots level. Then when the trainings are done at the grassroots level, then it's again a different community, not the leaders. People from the very grassroots level, they have different issues, different accessibility issues, and also how to make a digital inclusion. Because all these sectors, all these levels, the decisions can be made and also make it accessible, so that when it's come to the final one, you know, it will be a fully accessible course with digital inclusion. So all these levels are very important, you know, to discuss what are the accessibility features that we should include. And also when the discussions are done and also when these trainings are done, what are the main policy levels, especially the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Marrakesh Treaty, Sustainable Development Goals, how to implement these things and make use of what is there in those documents and implement them maybe online level, because there's a digital accessibility is also their right to access for information. Because as people with disabilities, we have the right to information, especially in accessible formats, it should be provided. All these things are taken into consideration and at all levels. So not only people with disabilities, then people with non-disabilities are also sensitized. Starting from the top level, policy level, organizational level, stakeholders, donors, funders, they are also sensitized on how to make it accessible, especially the developers, web developers, app developers. So when you do such things, you know, in the years, the mechanisms are there in place so that automatically all these accessibility features and access to information will be in proper order. So it has all of us, people with disabilities and non-disabilities, should get together to make this accessibility and digital inclusion for internet governance. That's why we as people with disabilities talk about accessibility and digital inclusion. You as people with non-disabilities, you have to take, maybe you cannot remember everything what we say in this 1 hour, but take what is relevant to you, think what you can do in a small way so that in the years to come, it will be implemented in a very big way.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Yes. And we are planning that the online course, it will be a new course, and it will be a model of accessibility. There will be international sign interpretation, captioning, of course, and any other requirements. So this is something that then can be used by other organizations in their online training. So then we have that trickle effect. So any courses can be available for anyone, including people with disability. So thank you. Vashkar, would you like to make any comments about this as well?
Thank you, Gunela. Firstly, I would like to remind you all, we people with disabilities and disability movement require advocate like Anu. That means we need number of non-disabled people who are in a decision-making process, or you are here. You need to lead our issues. If women movement led by men, maybe it not looks good, but if men don't support the women movement, I think women rights cannot be implemented. You agree? So that's why we, people with disabilities, require your support to support us to implement our requirement. Remember, we are talking not only for us, we are talking about the universal design. When I speak slowly, it is easy for you to understand. If I speak fast, then it is very difficult for many of you. So this is a requirement for a person with disabilities, that everyone will speak slowly in a seminar, then everyone can understand. So it is a universal question of universal design. If you have an e-book, if it is interactive, if it is text-based, if there is alternative text in the image, it is helpful for all, not only for me. All types of people can be benefited. If we design a course which is easily navigable and understandable, then that is not only for the people with disabilities. Anyone can enjoy this course. I can give you one example. When we are proposing IG course to our Dhaka trainees, Dhaka workshop training participants, some of them are physical disability. That means they can see, but still they face difficulties to access the Internet Society course because it was a bit complicated. Not only for people with disabilities, for many others. So we need to make it very simple and universally designed, then everybody can enjoy it. And another thing I would like to mention, we, mainstreaming movement, we have also some failure from disability community. Like this is a mainstreaming movement. We are talking in APrIGF, it is a mainstreaming movement. There is a disability movement. So we disability community need to come forward. Like so-called INGO, there is many disability INGO. Why they are not supporting this program like APrIGF? They should come here. They should support us. They should host some session here. Then mainstreaming movement can accept the disability issues more frequently. Lastly, I would like to say 3 things. One, there is a 3 commitment by UN, UNCRPD, SDG, and UN Disability Inclusion Strategy. But UN need to realize them. That is their commitment. They need to be responsible. They need to take the responsibility. But unfortunately, country level UN agencies are not that much responsible. They are even not bothering the disability inclusion issues in a highest manner. And like if I say that IGF, they should invite more people with disabilities. They create an opportunity for people with disabilities who can join in the global discussion. And another point, what I would like to mention, That is our national commitment. Each country have a commitment to make all the services inclusive for all. I think it is a constitutional mandate of the all countries. So lastly, I would like to say, nothing about us without us. If we are not in a leadership, decision-making forum or a discussion, our rights will be not will be achieved. Thank you, APrIGF and all the great people for listening me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vashkar. And I think that we can't say often enough, nothing about us without us. We shouldn't be talking about accessibility solutions without having persons with disability around the table, being part of that discussion right from the start. That's what we all want and require. So I also wanted to say that the link to the Dhaka Declaration has been posted, and so you can click on that. And also we are keen to have questions and comments from both participants here and remotely. So please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. And yes, Satish.
Satish, can you hear me? Right. So this is not questions from the remote participants, but from me. One comment and a question. The comment is on the Dhaka Declaration, which is an excellent starting point for our work for the future. We have specified there what our expectations are from different stakeholders, including governments, including industry, and so on. What is unclear to me is that how are we going to ensure that we make progress on these? There is a kind of observatory role, which I'm not sure who's going to be able to lead that effort. That someone has to keep track of, as Vashkar pointed out, the UN and the different countries, the private sector. Someone has to kind of monitor how they're performing on these obligations or these commitments. So it would be interesting if the ISOC standing group can do that as an ongoing process. Or else maybe we should think of someone else who can do that, a grouping of the people with disabilities themselves. My second comment is that yesterday we had a session on what is so-called as deceptive design. What this means is design that pushes people in a certain direction. For example, a web page where you are automatically subscribed and it's very hard to unsubscribe yourself. They make it very hard. So it is hard for an ordinary person. For persons with disabilities, it would be much harder to escape. For instance, in India, there is a education technology company which sells tablets with educational content to children. They push it to people, especially very poor people in the society where their incomes are very low, and it's auto-subscribe. If you want to unsubscribe, you have to kind of call them up and talk to them in English. Virtually impossible to unsubscribe. So what I'm pointing out is that in the case of the web, yesterday it was brought out that there is a human rights angle to graphic design. This is not something that we conflate together. So now extending that logic, I think there is a reason why people with disabilities have to be even more concerned with these kind of practices and should work out some defensive mechanism so that they are not trapped into this kind of situations. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. And there's really two important questions there. The first one is about how we monitor progress in the issues that we want to advocate for in the Dhaka Declaration. That's a big project, a project all on its own. And we probably need to have a longer term support program to achieve that. And so I'm going to include that in one of the questions that I wanted to ask particular panelist anyway, which is what role do other stakeholder groups have in supporting and and making progress in internet governance. So maybe Anju could take that question to start with. Thank you.
Thanks, Gunela. Just to point out what you said in terms of deceptive designs and dark patterns, something that Web Foundation is working on. And if anyone's interested, please get in touch with me or Kaushalya, and we'll be able to engage you in the Asia Pacific sessions and consultations and also workshops. But it's very specifically, well, it's very specific to the persons with disability, particularly visual impaired, because they're usually affected by this. So we've been involving Vashkar in this process, as well as including Shabbir bhai. And so I'm a computer science person. I mean, I started as a computer science graduated. And so I did a lot of coding, programming, developing. And at that point, I don't think any of our lecturers even thought about human-centric design thinking approach, design thinking, and how do we include accessibility issues, etc. I don't remember. Even if I was a volunteer from a very beginning, supporting United Blind Persons of Fiji, and we were trying to engage in primary, secondary school levels. I became a volunteer for the disability community in the Pacific. And we did this workshop. And again, not many people understood web design accessibility standards and guidelines. I mean, it was difficult also for people in the policy, like policymakers, or even the people in IT for the various governments to actually address this. During my time, and I'm talking about Ice Age time. So I feel like now everything has changed, and everything now I feel is about human-centered design thinking approach. And design thinking is very important when it comes to accessibility issues, and now it's happening. And I'm really happy that there's so many that are now starting to think about that. So I'm glad you brought that up. In terms of policies, high-level interventions, I'll just give you two quick examples. So we're working in Bangladesh for now, and we're working on a broadband policy for Bangladesh. So the broadband policy in 2009 did not specify anything on disability or gender inclusivity or other diverse group. You know this, Vashkar bhai, because you've read that. And so it wasn't really a bottom-up approach, it was sort of a top-down, right? So now when we design broadband policies, universal access policies, or even telco policies, etc., we think about the bottom-up approach. And so now we're involving a multi-stakeholder community. So what are we doing? We have a specific session with Vashkar bhai, who's going to be leading with other disability organizations, as you mentioned, that they're not usually part of the conversation, to design how the policy should be and how they're going to set targets specifically for them to achieve meaningful connectivity and access. So this is just an example. It's sort of, and so now the policymakers are starting to think, okay, we can, but they're just not sure how to do it. So you are actually sensitization. There's a sensitization process with that as well when it comes to policy making. And you can't expect a policymaker to think about everything, right? They sometimes forget about it. But it's important for us, people like us, or people who are continuously championing or engaging disability community, to make sure that everything is included in the policies. That's one example. Two is there's these specific gender scorecards, and that scorecard focuses on online safety, internet empowerment, internet access. It also focuses on content and services. And so a lot of that, so the leads are actually part of this conference as well. They went out to the disability community, they engaged them, they talked about what is the access and connectivity issues in PNG, Tonga, and Samoa. How can they make sure that their projects, activities, etc., can be aligned to the policies that we have, and how can we change the policies to make sure that it's all inclusive and focusing on persons with disabilities. So it's a data research, evidence-based data and research, and then how does that translate into policies? And a lot of that is including the persons with disability, particularly women with disabilities. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but these are just some examples of what is happening. I'll just give back.
Gunela, Shabbir has raised his hand.
Yes, good. Thank you. I was going to pass over to Dr. Shabbir, please. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Satish, for raising these two questions, and particularly the second one with regards to deceptive design and dark things. Firstly, about Dhaka Declaration and Dhaka Workshop outcomes, there are two things to it. One is the commitment by the participants themselves. And you are very much right and rightly concerned that how do we monitor the progress on that. So the next phase of that workshop is going to be the participants of that workshop would, in the second phase, would run the work trainings in their own countries, in their own nationalities, and given the fundings and other things happening that are linked with it, if possible, they would also run some workshops in the neighboring countries as well. But this depends upon the second phase of the project if it goes through. Secondly, there are as Dhaka Declaration calls upon different governments and IGOs to commit to certain levels and certain standards. So one index that I can point people to, and of course we can either partner with that or we can start a separately different project of evaluation and monitoring, is the G3 ICT's DARE index, where they evaluate and where they also evaluate country-wise the accessibility, digital accessibility index, and they also numbered it by regions and by global as well. So there are different levels to this index, and they have been doing it for like 4 or 5 years or so. So this initiative is significant when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, and it's one of the best initiatives out there. Secondly, about the deceptive design, I would say that this is very important, and security and privacy has been very important for me as person with disability when it comes to the internet. And my concern have been right from asking CAPTCHA for people with vision impairment to authorize themselves at a certain page and not including an audio option to it also raises privacy concerns for people with disabilities. And with this, the incidents that Satish mentioned, this adds another layer of complexity to the privacy security concerns of people with disabilities that are connected to the internet. Lastly, I would also like to point out that commitments are commitments unless, and they are just piece of paper unless they are implemented upon. And without going into details, just would like just to mention that though there are 3 initiatives by the UN with regards to inclusion of persons with disabilities, but ironically, today's IGF MSD doesn't have a person with disability included, and also a so-called a council of elders, which is being called, please forgive me if it is if it is considered offensive, but the new leadership panel that has been designed and implemented at the UN level by the UN Secretary General to the IGF does not include any representation by the person with disabilities, despite all the 3 layers of commitments by the UN itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, again, we need that representation on the highest levels as well as on a number of different levels, and we need to ensure that happens. So I call on any, yes, please.
Hello, my name Elanto from Combined Resource Institution Indonesia. My comments about when the people with the disabilities as the target of the datafication. So in the context in Indonesia, we have a social welfare database collection managed by the several ministries in the national level. And this kind of database become the basis for the social protection program. But the problem or the issues is about how the people with the disabilities can participate in the data verification in the village level, because even for the village people or for the ordinary people in the village level, sometimes the participation during the database verification for social protection program sometimes quite difficult. So my NGO, we develop some technical solution as well. We are making some platform as the village information system as an open source initiative in the village level in several regions. But the issue is not only about the technical thing, but in the political, social political context in the village and also in the local level. So, so when we talk about the digital inclusion, it's also about the democracy with the community, but also it's about the data justice as well for the people with the disabilities, for the women, and also women with the disabilities. So in Indonesia, you know, we have thousands of islands, and hundreds of regions, and not all of the region have NGO or academia can facilitate the people with the disabilities. My NGO based in Yogyakarta in Central Java, so we have a lot of people to facilitate the disabilities. Yeah, if you have another or maybe similar issues, maybe you can share it. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I ask the panel to respond to that, we have two more people in the queue, and we'll have to close the queue there. And so we only have 5 minutes to go. Beg your pardon? Yes, good idea. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the impressive talks. I'm waiting from Taiwan, and I want to share an experience about the concept that it is beneficial for all of us that implemented the needs for people with disabilities. Recently in Japanese OTT platforms, they are implementing the policy of barrier-free, so they literally gives those lyric tags on the, when people are seeing those videos, they can see the tags under, yeah. And I think it is beneficial for all of us to understand those content. Since I'm a Taiwanese and my mother tongue is Chinese, so it could be hard for me, even I have learned Japanese for 10 years, it's hard for me to understand the content directly. So with those texts, it's easier for me to learn Japanese through those policies. So I think it is really important to recognize that the implementing itself is beneficial for all instead of for only person with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement, yes. So please.
My name is Farooq, and I'm the South Asia Regional Director for Article 19. Article 19 is an international organization based in London, and it was created in 1987. So that was the time when there was no digital world on the universe. But we talk a lot about freedom of expression and right to know. And we work all over the world. We have 9 regional offices. We are active in 39 countries. However, these days we have 5 themes, and digital is the main, one of the main areas that we work on. But this is about self. assessment and self-criticism. We talk about right to information and access to internet and etc. But by any chance, we never included the people with disability in our thinking. When we wrote the projects, we didn't write this because we are project-based. So what realization we got from Article 19 in Bangladesh when the Bangladesh event happened. And now whenever we are writing anything on internet freedom, we are trying to include disability and other marginalized group as well. It's not only disability in that sense, the accessibility, but we are not expert on that. We have no clue on that. So the collaboration between this group and Article 19, we are starting in South Asia and hopefully we'll be able to bring it to the other part of the world as well. So that's my hope, and this collaboration, I'm trying to highlight it again, because at this point we are writing a proposal now, and we should have longer term proposal on this kind of thing. So I'm begging for collaboration and assistance. That's my point.
Thank you. And I think that's a wonderful note to finish on in regard to working together to find solutions to increase accessibility for everyone, and that includes persons with disabilities. So thank you for those comments. Swaran, we really need to close.
Okay. Okay, just one thing I wanted to say. Universal design should not be limited just to softwares or websites, because I've had experiences where my students feel a lot of stigma if they don't encourage other persons with disabilities to use devices like hearing aids, but they look so similar to earphones. So if you can have such a simple example of students encouraging each other because it looks like earphones, why can't we implement it on wheelchairs? So I think what Vashkar said completely resonates with the experiences I've had with students about not limiting universal design only to websites and softwares. It should also include assistive technologies, especially hardware. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I'm very tempted then to give an example. Yes. So yes, we need to close. It's exactly on the closing time at 10:30. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panelists, both here and remotely. And thank you very much for your participation, attendance, comments, and questions. And let's the work continue. Thank you.
Recording stopped.